welcome. I'm so glad that everybody's here. We'll give everybody just a minute to find us to get on to the live stream. It's very Tuesday type of, well, it's a very Monday type of Tuesday for me, I guess. I had to take my niece to the airport this morning, so I had to get up at like 4:30 in order to get her there. So I'm like still with my iced coffee because 4:30 in the morning comes really, really early. That's for sure. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get started. I just have to find my slides. Here we go. All right, so today we are talking about how to attract readers and grow your audience of engaged superfans. Just some housekeeping real quick. We'll be here every day this week at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Eastern Time. If you haven't yet, make sure that you get access to all of the extras. There's some PDFs. There's all the videos in one place. It's totally free. You can go to infjwoman.com/challenge, and there's a link there to sign up. And that's the portal from a program that's called Thinkific. That just has everything all there together. So today we're going to talk about how to attract readers and grow your audience of engaged superfans. When I first started my blog, we talked about this yesterday. If you didn't join us yesterday, make sure you go back and watch video number 1. This is my blog, INFJ Woman. And when I first started it, I was obsessed with how many people were reading it. And I mean, like for the first 2 years, I was obsessed. I was glued to the analytics. And if they weren't going up, if the views weren't going up, the page views, and then the unique page views, I was a mess. I was worried. I was panicking. And part of it, I feel like, is this mentality from I've worked in digital marketing for about 10 years, and there's always this mentality of we need more. We need more views, we need more likes, we need more leads. So it always has to be trending upward. It can't be trending downwards. So I was obsessed with it. I was constantly looking at it, and that was all that I was worried about. And if it wasn't going the right direction, then I was like completely panicked. But then I realized after a while that that was totally the wrong way to look at it. That it didn't matter how many people were reading my blog, really. It didn't. All it mattered was that I was helping the people that were reading my blog. The key to success isn't a million views on your blog. It's not even a billion views. The key to success is an engaged audience. When you have a really engaged audience, you can have 100 people that are really engaged and make $100,000 a year. That's really all that you need. If income is what you're looking for, even if it's just like a side hustle, all you need is 100 people who are true super fans who are really engaged. You can have a profitable business with that. You don't need a million views or a billion fans. You just need a few. I started thinking about this because I should have put a slide in here, but it just occurred to me. One of the things that really made me think about this is the band that I like. If you've been around my podcast, my blog, I talk about New Kids on the Block. I love them. I just became one of their fans in 2016, but I know they've been around since like the mid to late 80s. But they still go on tour. The last tour that they had last year was the most profitable one they've ever had. And the thing about it is they don't have they don't have a billion fans. They might have a million fans, maybe, but not like hardcore dedicated fans. And I say that because when I go to their events, I've been to meet and greet. I've been to like autograph signings that were free. I've been to cruises because they do a cruise usually every year, every 2 years. And I've been to meet and greet in different cities. So I went to one in Florida, I went to one in Kansas City, I went to one in New Orleans. I went to one somewhere else too. But I see the same people at meet and greet every time I go. So, and I see the same people that are at these other events that they do. So I know that they don't have a massive amount of fans. They still have enough fans where they can sell out arenas. You know, they can sell out 15,000 people. In fact, I went to see them at Fenway Park and it was sold out and there was 40,000 people there. But the point is they don't need a billion fans. They only need engaged fans, right? If you can get 500 engaged fans, which is probably, you know, I would say they probably have maybe 1,000, maybe 2 or 3,000 like super engaged fans. That's really all you need to be incredibly successful, at least for them. Those are the dedicated hardcore people that spend all the money on meet and greets and cruises and things like that. It's the same group of people. So I know it's not a very big group of people. So when you're talking about your blog, it's the same thing. You don't need a bunch of fans. You just need a few that are engaged. So a big question is, how do you get people engaged, right? The biggest thing that I've learned to get people engaged is radical empathy. This is something that I'm borrowing from Kathy Heller because she talks about it all the time, and I absolutely love it. So when we think about empathy, empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of somebody else. For us as INFJs, we kind of have a superpower here because we do this naturally. We're always thinking about other people and we can feel their emotions without even trying to feel their emotions, right? So when we do try to feel their emotions, when we do show up for them, it gets to that point where it's radical, right? We're thinking about them and we're trying to show up for them, thinking about what they need, thinking about what they want. And then when you do all of that and then you show up in a way that you know is going to support them, that's all that you need to build these engaged, amazing fans. You have to show up for people. And that means showing up for them in your blog and showing up for them however you promote your blog. Most people promote them through social media. So it's not just using social media as a business tool. It's not just using your blog as a business, but it's thinking about what people need, thinking about what they want, thinking about how you can help them the most, and then showing up for them and giving them that support. That's really all that you need to build an engaged audience. So this is my example of giving a graphic designer too much too much time and too many assets. So this is supposed to be, I think it's a light, honestly, because I wanted to tell you a story about a lady that I talked to at the electric company that was like the perfect example of radical empathy. So I don't know about you, but I hate calling like the cable company, the electric company. It's just always a fiasco. But recently, I moved into a new apartment in May of last year. And so when I did, I called the electric company and I told them that I had moved, and they're like, okay, we get your account set up. You're totally fine. You'll get a bill, but it could be, you know, 6 to 8 weeks before you get your first bill. And I was like, totally fine. So after about 3 months, I noticed that I hadn't gotten a bill, and I called them and they're like, oh yeah, we'll send you a bill. No big deal. And I was like, okay. So then it was probably 5 months had gone by and I hadn't gotten a bill. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be really bad. I don't really want like a $1,500 electric bill. So I called them again and I explained the situation, everything that had happened to this lady. Oh, something else that had happened. The electric company had called the apartment building that we live in and said, hey, your bill was going to the wrong person. you need to call. And so the manager called me and said, you need to call. So I called them. This was at 5 months, right? I called them and explained the whole situation to them. And they're like, I don't know what to do. You'll have to talk to somebody else. So I talked to somebody else. They're like, wow, I really don't know what to do. You'll need to talk to somebody else. And so by the time I got to like the fourth person, I'd been on the phone for almost 2 hours and I was like beyond frustrated. So the next person gets on the phone and I was trying really hard to be like super, super nice because my niece has kind of gotten on to me for being like too direct and too intense with people, especially on the phone. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to just stay calm and be nice. And so this fourth lady gets on the phone and she's like, so how can I help you? And I'm like, okay, well, please understand that I'm like super frustrated. I've been on the phone for 2 hours. I've explained the situation. Like, you're the fourth person that I've explained this to. And she's like, okay, listen, I'm going to help you. We're going to figure this out. And I was like, okay, well, nobody else could, but I hope that's true. So I explained to her the whole situation again. And she's like, okay, I know what happened. They just grabbed somebody else's social security number and attached it to your account. Like, they probably thought that it was the right one, but it wasn't. And so then the bill started going to them. And I'm like, well, can you fix that? And she's like, yeah, we're just going to start over. You're going to get a brand new account. And I'm like, are you serious? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, well, what about the 5 months of electricity that I didn't pay for? And she's like, well, they might figure it out. They might not. They're probably not going to figure it out. But she's like, it's not your fault. It was our fault because whoever set your account up did it wrong. And I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, you just like saved me like $1,500 to $2,000. And she's like, yeah, I know it's really frustrating to call us. I know it could be a hassle. Like, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Is there anything else that I could do for you? And I'm like, no, like, this is the best phone call that I've ever had. Like, is there a survey at the end of this phone call? Because I really want to tell your boss that you did an amazing job. And it's not just the money that I saved, which was a lot of money for me, but it was just the whole experience of like, I'm not going to pass this off to somebody else. I'm going to fix this. What do you need? What can I do for you? How can I solve this problem for you? It made such a huge difference to me. And even if she couldn't have solved my problem, just her attitude of like, how can I help you? I'm going to fix this for you. And if I can't fix it, I'll find the right person to fix it for you. It made such a huge difference to me. And I know from my experience, I always, with my blog, I try to look at what do I want as a consumer? What do I want as a reader? What do I want when I'm looking at social media accounts, right? How would I feel as the customer in this situation? I try to put myself in that spot and I try to show up for people in a way that I would like as the customer. And so far, that seemed to be the best thing that I can do because so many people don't do that nowadays. And maybe it's just me that I've gotten a little bit older and I'm like, oh, the kids nowadays, they're just not the same. And I'll be honest, I do that a lot. But I think that part of it is understanding as you get older that things change, and you like things the way that they used to be. And it seems like that customer service is a lot harder to find nowadays. All right, so let's talk a little bit about engaging your customers. So your blog content is one way that you're going to engage the customers. I know we talked about last week, I like to post one blog post a week. At least I did in the beginning. I'm not so good at it now because I have so many other things going on. But when you're first getting started, posting one blog post a week is a really good cadence to keep. So the way that you get people engaged with your blog content is that you have to talk about what's really important to you, right? You have to show up for people. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be perfect. We talked about last week, or I keep saying last week, it was yesterday. Really. We talked about yesterday. I'm not great at spelling, right? I am not great at putting sentences together. My blogs are certainly not perfect. But you don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up for people, right? You just need to think about what they need and how you can help them. And I like to think about it too, is that it's not about me. I am writing about my personal experience, and a lot of the stuff that I write about helps me a lot. But I always try to think about one other person, right? I try to think about what that person is going through and what they need. And I feel like if I can help that other person, then that's all that matters. And the thing about it too is, like I said, I've worked professionally in digital marketing for about 10 years. And I know from experience that you can have a perfect marketing plan. You can spend $200,000 a year on advertising, but if you don't have the right content on your blog, you're not going to get engaged fans. And like I said, the right content, it's not perfect content. It's just showing up with radical empathy. That's what you're looking for. So how do you think about showing up? You know, I talked about one other person. The best thing that you could do is think about your ideal customer. And this is actually a page from a PDF that I've put in the portal. So if you haven't signed up, make sure that you do. You can grab that PDF. There's a bunch of questions there that will help you figure out who your ideal customer is and help you get a really clear picture of those. One of the things that they tell you in marketing is to even name that person. And there are some retail companies that have named the person. I forget. I worked for one and they called her like Janet or Samantha or something. I forget. And it was like a clothing store that I worked at over the holidays a long time ago. And people kept talking about like Janet. And I'm like, they're like, well, what does Janet want? Well, would Janet wear this? And I'm like, who's Janet? Is Janet like the owner? And they're like, no, Janet is like our ideal customer. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's kind of weird, but okay. But now that I have more experience, though, now it makes sense to me to name that person, because you're thinking about basically the one other person, the one person that you're trying to help. Now, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure out who their ideal customer is, right? But I'll give you a secret. I'll tell you this really big secret that's really important, especially for your blog. Your ideal customer is you. She's a past version of you. She's struggling with something that you've struggled with and that you've made it through. So when you think about it in that perspective, then you know exactly who she is and you know exactly what she needs because you've been there and you've done it. I think about me, the version of me in like 2017 or 2015, actually. I was struggling. I went through a time where I didn't think that I was going to make it. And I felt like I didn't have any meaning or purpose in my life. I had thought prior to that I had a direction that I was going, and I knew why I was doing all the things that I was doing. And then all of it sort of fell apart. And I felt lost and confused, and I had no idea who I was because my whole identity had been built around this job that I had, and all of that fell apart. And then in 2016, I lost the job and it completely fell apart. And then it was like, okay, starting over again. What do I do now? So when I think about somebody who's in that situation, in that mindset, that's my ideal customer. I was there. I got myself out of it. And I know how to help somebody who's in that particular situation. So when I think about that, I think, well, what would I tell her? What does she need to know to get her out of that situation? And that's the person that I write to when I write my blog. So it's a past version of you. The next part of this will help you figure out how you're going to find your engaged audience. So you have to think about this person. Where does she hang out? What does she like to do? Where does she spend her free time? Now, the vast majority of us spend a lot of our time on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, maybe some other places. If social media is not for you, that's okay. We can still be friends. But I have to tell you that social media is for me. I love social media. I was on Facebook in 2008. I think one of my friends like pestered me until I made an account. And I thought it was stupid until I created the account. And one of the first things that I did was connect with a friend of mine who I hadn't talked to in 4 years. And then it was like this light bulb went off and I was like, oh, this is super awesome. Like I can be friends with all these people and still talk to these people that I wouldn't be friends with because I've moved away from them and I'm not really great at like texting people and being on the phone, but we can still be friends and we can still talk to each other every once in a while just through this great form of communication. And I'll be honest, it is a little bit different now than what it used to be. But it's still my favorite thing. I love Instagram as well, as you'll hear a lot about Instagram because I love Instagram. Pinterest is actually one of the main things that drove me to start my blog and my Instagram account. I've started my Instagram account by posting. So what happened was I had an Instagram or a Pinterest board. I had a Pinterest board about INFJs and I just kept saving a lot of graphics to it. And I had like 5,000 graphics saved to it. And around the time, like right before I started my Instagram account, I was looking at the number of pins that I had and I thought, I could share this with other people. And like, there's probably somebody else out there who's interested in this, not just me. And it almost, even though the pins weren't mine, they belonged to other people, it felt kind of selfish for me to keep it to myself because I knew that it had helped me. And I was like, okay, I can help other people with this. I just need to share it with them. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if it was on Instagram? So I took a lot of the pins that I had on Pinterest and reposted them on Instagram. And some people give me a lot of flack for that and they say, oh, you should create your own pins. I do or create your own Instagram graphics, which I do create some of my own now. But there's a lot of them that still come from Pinterest. I try to leave people's credit on there if they have their own marks on their graphics. I try not to crop any of those out. But I still feel the same way that if there's something that I see on Pinterest that touches me, that makes a lot of sense to me, then I want to share it with everybody else on Instagram. And I have a Pinterest board too for INFJ Woman, but it just feels like I have to share it with other people. Like I want to share it with other people because it's that important to me. So I found too that one of the best ways that you can promote your blog and grow your audience is through social media. It's just something that I love. It's something that I do in my free time. It's kind of my baby, honestly, and I really like it a lot. When I first started, I would say 90% of the traffic that I got to my website came from Pinterest. To my blog, it came from Pinterest because I posted pins for my blog posts like crazy. And so tons of traffic came from Pinterest. All right. So the most important thing for you to grow an engaged audience is for you to show up for them. Show up for them the same way that you want other people to show up for you. That's all that really matters. So I want to talk about one other thing. A lot of people, when they think about starting a blog, or when they think about even starting an Instagram account or a Pinterest account, they think there's not enough for me, right? It's like this trap that people fall into, which I'm guilty of falling into it as well. I think that about YouTube. I like to make YouTube videos, and one of my favorite things to do is actually watch other people's YouTube videos. And every time I click on a video and I'm like, oh my God, this video has like 10 million views. How do you get 10 million views? And then my next thought is, well, they have 10 million views because everybody likes them, but everybody watches them and they're not going to watch my channel. And I thought that about my blog too when I first started, like there's not enough for me. You know, there's millions of people reading other blogs, but there's not enough that they're going to read my blog. And it's this mindset that is called scarcity that we think about, that, you know, there's not enough for me. There's not enough money for me, right? If Elon Musk has $200 billion, then he has all the money and there's not enough for me, right? There's not enough land for me. There's not enough houses for me because everybody else has a house, but there's not enough for me. There's not enough work for me. There's not enough attention for me. There's not enough audience for me. It can affect you in all different ways. There's not enough love for me, right? It can affect you in that way too. So I think about one of my favorite podcasters. Her name is Kathy Heller. I've talked about her quite a bit. She has like 25 million people. That was the last time that I heard the number. She probably has closer to 50 million people now that listen to her podcast. So when I started a podcast, I was like, is anybody going to listen to it? I mean, 25 million people listen to her podcast. Why would they listen to mine? And hers is like really good, but she has this whole team of people that work for her. And it's, my podcast is just me sitting in front of my computer with a microphone. That's it. I do everything. But at the end of the day, you know, I started thinking about how many podcasts I listen to. And honestly, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because I'm going to pull up my podcast app and I'm going to show you how many podcasts I listen to. So don't judge me for some of these because they're probably not your type of podcast, but that's okay. We can still be friends. But you see all the podcasts that I listen to? There's a bunch of them, right? It's not like I just listen to one podcast and that's it. I listen to, what is there? There's probably 20 different podcasts on there. And then sometimes I listen to other podcasts. I have a whole other list on Spotify that I listen to. So what I'm saying is that just because one person has 50 million views, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have 50 million views, right? Scarcity is this mindset that a lot of us fall into. And it's really, really easy for us to fall into it. The scarcity mindset is always thinking there's not enough for me. And when you live in that mindset, you get what you look for. If you look for scarcity, you'll see it. You'll find it. And I really believe that you create it. It's kind of like when you buy a new car. I bought a new car. Well, it wasn't new, it was used, but it was only like a year old. I bought it in 2018 in like March, I think. And it's a red Toyota Corolla that I absolutely love. It's this Toyota color that's called Barcelona Red Metallic, which is like a little bit deeper red, and it's metallic, which I love. Like all of my cars have to be metallic. It's just a thing. But before I bought the car, I didn't see any of them anywhere. But after I bought the car, I started seeing them everywhere because I was looking for them, right? Another thing too, one of my friends bought a Tesla, and I wasn't really looking for Teslas before that because there weren't really a lot of them, and it was kind of this unique thing that he bought one. But after he bought one, I started looking for them and I saw them everywhere. And now it's like I can pick a Tesla out of all the cars that I see. And I'm always pointing them out to my niece, and she's like, why do I care? Like, I really genuinely don't care that car is a Tesla. And I'm like, okay, I just thought it was unique that, there's another one. I think they multiply here in Massachusetts, though, because there's tons of them around Boston. But the point is, you get what you're looking for, right? And I genuinely believe that when you're looking for scarcity, you'll see it. But I think the opposite is true as well. That if you look for abundance, you're going to see that instead, right? If you look for opportunities, you'll see opportunities. And I believe that you'll attract them to yourself as well. So for me, I try to look at things in a different way. So rather than saying there's not enough for me, I say, it's great that other people have 25 million downloads on their podcast, that other people have 25 million views on their blog. That's a great opportunity for me. That means that there are 25 million people out there who are interested in reading my blog too. And I'm excited about that. I'm ready for that. I'm open for that. I've been learning a lot about abundance. And I think that that's part of it, is not only looking for it, but being open to it, being ready for it. Maybe not expecting it, but just being okay with it. There's enough out there for everyone. And that applies to everything. That applies to attention, to audience, to houses, to work, to money. As long as you're open to it, it'll come looking for you. There's enough for everyone, and I certainly believe that you deserve it. All right, so I have some homework for you. If you haven't logged into the portal yet, make sure that you do. If you don't have access to it yet, I should have put the address up here. But you can go to infjwoman.com/challenge, and there'll be a link for it in the video description too, so that you can get access to it. Download the PDF from the portal, which is all about your ideal customer. And I wanted to tell you to try not to get overwhelmed with this, right? It's not supposed to be this difficult, excruciating thing to do, especially because we're going to meet back here again, same time tomorrow. It doesn't need to be something that you spend an enormous amount of time on. I just want you to think about the customer that you're really trying to reach. Think about some of the most difficult things that you've been through, which can be really hard. I'm not going to lie. Even just talking about it today, it's like taking myself back to that time that was really difficult in my life, and it's not easy to go back there. So don't stress yourself out talking about or thinking about it. Just think about who it is that you want to help. That's the best thing to do. Okay, so I will meet you back here, same time, same place tomorrow, and we're going to talk about how to persevere through failure and to reach your goals. There have been so many times in my blog that I thought I was a failure. I thought nothing was ever going to be okay. And so many times that I was like, ugh, I'm just ready to quit. Like, I'm over it. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. But I'm so glad that I kept going. And kind of like what I was talking about yesterday, it seems like always, every time I get to that point, there's somebody who shows up and says, thank you so much for doing this. You really helped me, and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to show you how to persevere through all those times, even before you have engaged super fans. I'm going to show you other ways that you can persevere as well. So, all right. I will see you then. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you again tomorrow.